On a small tangent, since we're talking about boards, did you get a chance to see what happened with the OpenAI board? Because I'm talking to Sam Altman soon. Is there any insight you have, just maybe lessons you draw from
Sure.
these kinds of events, especially with an AI technology company, such dramatic things happening?
Yeah, that was an incredible story. Look, governance really matters. And the governance structure of OpenAI, I think, leaves something to be desired. I think Sam's point was this, and maybe Elon Musk's point, originally set up as a nonprofit. It reminds me, actually, I invested in a nonprofit run by a former Facebook founder where he's going to create a Facebook-like entity for nonprofits to promote, goodness in the world. And the problem was he couldn't hire the talent he wanted because he couldn't grant stock options. He couldn't pay market salaries. And ultimately, he ended up selling the business to a for-profit. So it taught me for-profit solutions to problems are much better than nonprofits. And here you had kind of a blend, right? It was set up as a nonprofit, but I think they found the same thing. They couldn't hire the talent they wanted without having a for-profit subsidiary. But the nonprofit entity, as I understand it, owns or a big chunk of OpenAI. And the investors own sort of a capped interest where their upside is capped, and they don't have representation on the board. And I think that's was a setup for a problem. And that's clearly what happened here.
And there's, I guess, some kind of complexity in the governance. I mean, because of this nonprofit and cap profit thing, it seems like there's a bunch of complexity and non-standard aspects to it that perhaps also contributed to the problem.
Yeah. Governance really matters. Boards of directors really matter. Giving the shareholders the right to have input at least once a year on the structure of the governance of a company is really important. And private, venture-backed boards are also not ideal. I'm an active investor in ventures, and there are some complicated issues that emerge in private sort of venture stage companies where board members have somewhat divergent incentives from the long-term owners of a business. And what you see a lot in venture boards is they're presided over generally by venture capital investors who are big investors in the company, and oftentimes it's more important to them to give to have the public perception that they're good directors, so they get the next best deal, right? If they get if they have a reputation for kind of taking on management too aggressively, word will get out in the small community of founders, and they'll miss the next Google. And so their interests are not just in that particular company. That's also, one of the problems. Again, it all comes back to incentives.
Can you explain to me the difference between venture-backed like VCs and shareholders? So this means before the company goes public?
Yeah. So private venture-backed companies, the boards tend to be very small. Could be a handful of the venture investors and management. They're often very rarely independent directors. It's just not an ideal structure.
Oh, I see. You want independent.
It's beneficial to have people who have an economic interest in the business and they care only about the success of that company, as opposed to someone who, if you think about the venture business, getting into the best deals is more important than any one deal. And you see cases where, the boards go along with, in some cases, bad behavior on the part of management because they want a reputation for being kind of a founder-friendly director. That's kind of problematic. You don't have the same issue in public company boards.